Yo, it's Crim's Corner number. Yeah, it's almost Halloween, y'all, which means it's time for some spooky, scary stories. And as a history teacher, I know and realize that there's nothing really scarier than American history, especially as a black person at any point in time in history. So I figured to get y'all in the mood for Halloween, I would share some real life spooky stories. And for real, I think I'm gonna call this a new series. Like, this series is gonna be called the American Horror Story series. And we're gonna start with the Waco horror story. So let's go back in time, y'all. 1916, Waco, Texas. There's a black child, a black teenager, 17 years old, named Jesse Washington. He works as a farmhand, AKA sharecropper, AKA slave to the Fryer family. Now, one day, on this plantation, Lucy Fryer was found dead. Her skull was smashed in. It was also stated that she was raped beforehand. But who did it? You got a black man that works on this plantation, so of course all fingers will point to Jesse Washington. When the police got there, they took Jesse down to the station. He immediately confessed. They had a very detailed confession, which was weird though, because Jesse Washington was mentally impaired and mentally challenged. Jesse Washington couldn't really perform basic skills and basic tasks. He was illiterate amongst other things. He couldn't even sign his name. At the bottom of the confession, he just put an X, which was barely coherent. So you have to even wonder right there, did Jesse do it? And if he did, why was the confession so detailed? Something he couldn't even have read or written. It's very curious, very interesting. So after that, Jesse goes to trial. The trial lasts about an hour. The jury of his peers, 12 white men, they deliberate for 4 minutes and decide that Jesse Washington is guilty and deserves the death penalty. Now, that's no surprise, because Texas is still killing dudes. They lead the league in killing folks, you know what I'm saying? So before the state could administer the death penalty for real, a mob of whites come up to the courthouse and they drag them all the way to City Hall. And along the way, they're beating them down, right? They're pelting them with rocks and sharp objects. And they start to throw oil on them, right? So you kind of know where this is going. When they get to City Hall, there's a tree in the vicinity. They place a chain snugly around his neck. And they take the other end and place it on a position to where they can yank him up and lower him. Yank him up and lower him. Now, around that same time, there's a crowd of whites amassing. They say there was over 15,000 white folks who came out to watch this in Waco, Texas. 15,000 men, women, yes, and children. Because as a parent, I know if you want your child to grow into something, you expose them to things. So the parents back then, 1916, wanted to make sure they raised some nice white supremacists, because children are born with a blank slate. So they made sure they enforced that clan, that hood mentality. You feel me? The real hood mentality. As Jesse Washington is there and the oil is on him, they begin to light a fire at the bottom. There are wood planks. Now Jesse, of course, starts to try to climb up the tree, but they lower him down. He starts to burn, he starts to char. And every time he burns and chars and they lift him up, someone approaches the tree and they start to snip off and cut off fingers and cut off toes and cut off body parts and, you guessed it, castrate him, AKA cut his penis off. See, back then, cutting off a body part of a black person was worth a lot of money. It was a souvenir, it was memorabilia. You can make money off of that, yeah. Or pose with the dead, charred body and sell that image. Send a postcard to your family and say, yo, this was the barbecue we had. And I'm not lying, that actually happened. So Jesse Washington, as you can imagine, is screaming. He's trying to survive. He's crying. He wants to live. But they keep lowering the body as he burns and he chars. And the reporters back then described hearing a crowd that was, and I quote, delighted to see this. Over 15,000 people. 15,000. Do you realize how many people that is? Some stadiums don't even hold that many, but 15,000 white children and men and women came to view this public spectacle. As Jesse Washington continued to char, it was quite apparent that he was dying and he was dead. When you look at pictures, all you see of Jesse Washington is what appears to be a dummy that is completely black with crisp body parts. Everything's crisp. You can see it looks as if like if you touched it just a little bit, it would collapse and fall apart into complete ashes. They describe this as a bonfire, just a family outing. So as they raised and lowered his body and it was clear he was dead, over the course of 2 hours, they took his body down. Mind you, they wanted Jesse to be alive as long as possible so he could experience the pain and suffering that they wanted to expose him to. But anyway, after they let him down, they put him in a bag and they dragged his body throughout the town before disposing of it in several parts of Waco, Texas. And you know what's scariest about this whole thing? Let's say Jesse did it. He was held accountable, definitely. But not one white person of the over 15,000 that was in attendance that day was held responsible for what happened to Jesse. And of those 15,000, they had kids. And those kids had kids. And that mindset was probably passed on to them too. American history is scary.